do minutes in the annual financial plan.
Yeah, we got a couple that are running late, but we're gonna start the meeting anyway. It's gonna bring it to order at 6:36. We'd like to stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Agenda review. There are a few items that we need to move. We're gonna move appointments to below after we review the previous minutes so that Mr. Bublat can be sworn in for appointments. And the executive section, we're gonna move back down to the bottom. Does anybody else want to change or move anything else? Okay. Any comments from the select board that's not on the agenda? Hear none? Yes, there is none. Comments from the town manager that are not on the agenda?
I'll reserve them for my report.
Okay. Citizens of any topics that are not on the agenda? No, it's not. Okay. Review our minutes from our previous meeting. Have a motion to approve the minutes from our previous meeting.
I can make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
A second.
Okay, any discussion? Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Now we're gonna do our appointments. We have two of them. One is for Joseph Blatt for the planning commission. He is rerunning for the same position that he's had. Is this a year? What is this one? It's a 4-year. For 4 years. Anyone want to make a motion for Joe to be on the planning commission?
Make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'd like to clarify
Yeah.
that he be appointed to seat 1 of the planning commission with a term expiring
3 years from today.
says on here. Expired. When did his term expire?
It expired in March.
So March of 2025. So it would expire
Yeah, March. It expired March 10th.
March 10th, and 4 years would be 2029.
Yeah.
So to March 10, 2029, but I didn't make that motion, so. I just would like those points added to the motion. Mr. Todd agrees.
Is the first one. First and second, all right with that?
I'll second. I don't think it is.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next one was for the one from the last meeting, Mr. Michael Cohen. Development Review Board, he has decided to do a 2-year term. So he'll be a full-time member.
I make a motion to appoint Michael Cohen to seat 5 of the Development Review Board with a term expiring
2 years.
February 2027. The other.
So I put it right before. So it'd be February 27th, 2027.
I guess I'm confused. Someone's appointed March 10th, 2025. Wouldn't their term expire March 10th, 2027?
No. It's right before the
These are always done at town meeting.
yeah, that's the way that I did it. but we never did this before. This is new. So I guess you
In
got,
how many years?
yes.
We've never done this?
A lot.
Yep.
So if the terms are always gonna expire at town meeting, is that the way they're intended?
That's the way that I wrote it.
It's kind of how we've lived almost forever, Forrest, you've been here.
Development Review Board is new. I don't believe Plan Commission seats expire on town meeting day.
Yeah, they do. We expire them all on, at town meeting. And any, that's just the way we've always done it.
So then Michael Cohen appointed to seat 5 on the Development Review Board with a term expiring February, pick a date, 26, 27, 2027.
So I put it, let me look in 2027 real quick.
The other seats are February 26th and February 27th.
Okay.
So I don't know which date you want to use. The 2026. Why would they not be
Brandon,
March town meeting day?
Go ahead, Mike.
Brandon, if I could suggest, you just use the town meeting day. Which it's always the first Tuesday in March.
So it would be the 20, if we keep it consistent with the way that it's written, it would be the 26th, February 26th.
Of 2027.
20.
Okay, so term expired 22/26/27.
And you have how many days between then and town meeting?
One.
That's the end of February.
Well, actually.
Oh, that's,
it would-
oh, yeah.
28.
If it, yeah.
Yeah, that was, yeah. Yeah, okay, we're good. I was just concerned about having an opening, like of a week.
Yeah.
Between that and town meeting, and if something came up and you had all of a sudden you've expired your members and you can't make a decision.
Yeah.
Till that, you have to sit and wait for another week. But no, that's good, that's fine.
Okay. Motion to accept this one?
I already made that motion.
Yeah. Then with the date,
Right.
okay.
Who seconded it? This is for Michael Cohen.
Michael Cohen. I didn't have anybody first or second.
I made the motion.
Okay,
Well, I can second it.
okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. So that's it for the appointment. So now we'll go on to FY 26 TA 60 annual financial plan.
So Ray is currently in the hospital with his father-in-law. Ray, can you hear us or do you plan on listening in? I see you on there, but I don't know if you're. Okay, so I will take this. This is the TA 60 form, we do it annually. Did everybody have an opportunity to review the memo?
Yes.
Okay, then I won't repeat myself.
Nope.
Any questions for me?
Do we need to vote on this, Frank?
Yes.
Make a motion to accept and how do you want this to read, the motion?
Motion to accept the FY 26 annual financial plan for 19 VSA 306J.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I did have a question, it's nothing to do with voting on it, it was just in the explanation where,
We've already voted on it.
this has nothing to do with the motion.
Discussion is over, we've already voted.
Just an informational question. Can I just pass?
Yeah.
It says class 1 roads receive 6% of the funds, class 2 roads receive 44%, class 3 receive 50%.
Yeah.
Of what?
So
I didn't
that's
know what that
of,
meant.
so that's of the state highway allocation we receive annually.
I thought they based it on the number of miles of each category
Yes,
of road.
it's per the number of miles, but they distribute it This is how it's just.
So so this is what we get, and 6% of the funds is for class one roads because 6% of our roads are class one.
Isn't this our budget?
No, this is within the orange book for the state, so like, let's say you have 150,000, you would take 6% of that 150,000 would go to class one roads.
But how does that link up to the number of miles of each type of road you have? I thought that's how the money was allocated.
It's allocated based on mileage, and then the funding itself is distributed on a percentage. So like.
So I'm just saying, is 6% of our roads class one? Is that how that works out?
No,
No,
that's just the allocation from.
from the mileage.
Yes,
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thanks.
I'll try to clarify it a little bit further and send you guys.
Oh, that's
Okay.
that was simple enough. I just want to know percentage of what.
Yeah, understood.
Okay, next item, large gathering permits for Wellwood Orchard. We have a Strawberry Festival, 6/21/25, Harvest Festival, 8/30/25, and a Wellwood Orchard Car Show, 10/11/25.
Do you want them done separately?
We can, I know. We don't have any problems with these, I don't see a sign off from our fire departments.
So we do have this, let me see real quick. So this one, these only require select board approval.
Okay.
Yep.
And no problems from any of them.
No, I haven't noted any issues with them.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to approve the 3 permits.
okay, is there a second for the 3 permits?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
A question,
Yeah,
in the past, what has police presence been for this? And how does that look right now for this event?
Depends on what we do. We're going to executive session at the end of the meeting. But of course there's patrol, but it's not targeted at these locations.
It's reasonable to expect that these things will be covered.
They draw, oh yeah, they'll be covered in any case, but.
I didn't know if we
obviously
had, I didn't know if we had like an officer that was dedicated to the event that day or anything like that, or,
No,
okay. All
we
right.
do see increased traffic, obviously,
Yeah,
so there is increased patrol.
okay, good.
any other questions? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, application for fireworks. 966 Plains Road, fireworks on 7/4 or 7/5, depending on the weather.
And Mr. O'Brien, I intended to provide public comment on my
Okay.
number.
Just on this, okay, just a second. So, well, we've been signed off by our fire warden and the West Weathersfield Fire Chief and the Scotty Volunteer Fire Department Fire Chief. So,
I have not signed it and Bill has not signed it yet.
okay,
I have a question. I don't know anything about fireworks. So I don't know what it said, what it means was his maximum shell size, 1.75 inches is one question. And the second question is, I wish that the applicant was here. I don't know what qualifications they have for setting off these fireworks. And not know, I mean, these may be little teeny things and it's a silly question. Or if they're, the big fireworks, has he done it before? Does he know what he's doing? Is that a weird question to ask?
that's not a weird question to ask.
Good question to ask.
I number one, I don't know why the person isn't here.
Do we require them to be licensed to do this? I know most people who come for these fireworks, the people that are doing it are licensed to do so. And I don't see any note of his experience, but those are my.
I have another question that as well, it kind of goes along with this.
and that's the insurance policy that's been submitted. Is there a rider specifically for the event?
Yeah, that's.
I did not see a rider.
No, I didn't either.
And this goes back to what DeForest was talking about a minute ago. The indication on the application is that there's no professional services being provided for the event. I agree. I think it's a personal thing that somebody's doing. Company discharging the display is blank, name of the company representative is blank. Those companies would typically be providing the insurance rider if they were doing the event. And without that, not having that, then there needs to be a specific rider, I think, from the insurance company. I mean, if there's a forest fire or something, a neighborhood burns down, you know, this insurance company is going to say, don't know what you're talking about.
Can we refuse it?
Absolutely. So I don't know if that's where we're at, but
In my opinion, after we hear our public comment, we'll go ahead first.
I'll look at the chair.
If you'd like to take
Thank you.
Mr. Rock.
I just got a little one-page set of comments, so I wanted to thank the select board. I want to comment in regards to the fireworks permit. Hopefully this helps and answers some questions too. The request is by a neighbor right adjacent to my farm. And I want to share my concerns for your consideration, not in opposition to celebration, just to this permit request. And it's in the interest of public safety and responsibility. Vermont law governs what type of fireworks displays can be legally permitted. Based on those guidelines, this permit request is not lawful. Only, quote, supervised public display fireworks, end of quote, events are legal in Vermont. They are specifically I4G display fireworks, which additionally require an ATF permit. All 1.3G consumer fireworks are illegal to sell, possess, or use in Vermont, with only limited situations such as sparklers and small popper types being the exception. Department of Public Safety provides clear guidance. I can leave those two handouts. One's municipal fireworks display checklist, and one is public fireworks display permit. I think our town policy is probably a little bit outdated. These new checklists, they don't marry with each other, so we're not really in line with the states, and it's easy to get in line. That's the good thing. The insurance provided is a concern, as the policy's half is what is recommended for a fireworks liability policy. More concerning is that an insurance policy will most certainly not cover losses resulting from illegal use of fireworks, regardless of an improperly approved permit. The risks not only this risks not only the property where the fireworks are launched from, but on the surrounding neighbors who could suffer significant loss. My property in particular, and my survey shows the location, the neighbors in yellow, and my property's below and to the back. So it's like a narrow shotgun. And a couple years ago, these are just some views of the proximity, and you can see it was coming down in the woods. Some of the embers made it to the ground, and this was when I would call this a misfire. Either multiples went off or something, but this is not Photoshop. You can see the flash was bright as daylight. And so I'll just leave this with you if you want to look at them. But we saw the misfire display, and we also noticed that because they're launching at an angle, they're clearing a tree line that we share and going off over a small field below. And many of them were not making full altitude. They were going too low, close to the ground. And the concussions were pretty significant. I've heard a lot of things blasting. Sir Sosnos isn't nearly as loud. And we have thick smoke throughout the whole thing. In the pastures, we had cattle out, and it took a couple hours for the smoke. And then I went and walked around almost towards midnight just to make sure there's nothing on fire. So here's the thing, though. There's a solution, and it's a good solution for everybody, including my neighbor. The only lawful pathway for a fireworks display in Vermont is through a supervised public display, and that's when you adhere to the safety protocols. I would enthusiastically support. I would be willing to financially contribute If they wanted to do a public fireworks display at a location like a municipal location like Hoisington Field, where you could hire a properly trained person, you're certified, you get permitted through the state, they've done all the right licensing, they've got proper controls of the fireworks. And then the fire department could also be able to safely access the site too. It's also their safety. So I would say that would be a great, if there was a town sanctioned fireworks display, I'd love to see that. If it can be safely and responsibly done. So I want to thank you for your consideration, and I'll leave this this stuff that I referenced with you so you can look through it if you like.
Thank you. Okay, Mike.
Dr. Bernie, were there any issues with the animals? I mean,
Yeah, we 2 years ago, we had more calves, and fewer cattle, and there's, cattle get skittish. You have some that are more skittish than others, everybody knows. And they were all spooked, and it's the thing with fireworks is really the concern for human life and property, but livestock to me is right behind that. And I don't want cattle to get spooked. I'd rather have good neighbors and good cattle. And I also think there's an organic aspect. We basically have organic practices. We don't put pesticides, insecticides, herbicides on our property, and I don't like all of that kind of stuff getting into the pastures. I hope that answers your question.
it does. A couple more. Where was I going? How long ago did you buy the farm?
5 years ago.
And you've been growing a business raising cattle, beef. For beef.
Yes.
And how big is your herd now?
It depends on the time of the season. It can be, it's been as many as 20, and it can go down from there depending on what processing and how many we're raising at the time.
And at what point in time did that kind of change, that you really started to invest in that?
I would just say that we've steadily been restoring the farm. That's probably the best way it's been said.
But I mean, it wasn't like you bought the farm and 20 cows.
No.
It happened over time.
Over time we built it.
So like, what I'm getting at is the herd has been growing, and this is a working farm.
No, we sell wholesale beef, and we raise.
But it's definitely a farm business. It is a working farm.
But I do want to just comment that my focus in commenting tonight is really just let's be safe, let's be responsible, let's follow the rules.
Just one more comment that goes along with yours, and that's doing it like public thing. But it might be better for us to unite with Springfield and do it at the airport. See, now we both kind of own some of that property, and it's a bigger area. I'm not sure Hoisington Fields.
No, it's not
that big.
No.
Yeah, a lot of forest and stuff there.
I would enthusiastically support and contribute to a municipal a true public display that can be conducted, and a location that's more suitable.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So,
You had a question.
oh, my concerns with the animals, how they were. And my question is just sort of general, does that mean that all my neighbors who send off fireworks at times
They're not supposed to be.
they're not supposed to be,
No.
huh?
No,
Okay,
I
good
get
to
it
know.
too, so.
Good to know.
Have
Just
we
permitted?
Nate, have we given Beatles to this address in the past?
Yes.
We did it once, right?
I think it's more than that. Brandon, how many times have we done this permit?
I would have to go back and research that, like. Our recommendation would be to table it and have the applicant.
That's
Yeah,
why I asked about the farm. That's not the Patriots.
If I may just add one last thing.
Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. To go back to your question though, my concern is not just the safety of my property, but the safety of my neighbors and the others too. These things are 1.75 millimeter, 1.75 inches. It's about 45 millimeter. It's a fairly large round. It's larger than it's larger than what the military uses for grenades. It's a fairly large round. For every 1 inch, there are calculations that the professionals use on the area, that the viewing area, you know. And there's a radius of something like 75 feet per 1 inch of projectile. So if it's nearly 2 inches, you know, if your property is about 300 feet across, which is a short distance, you know, 100-yard dash. You have a 100-yard dash is the width of the property. That means you'd have to go out exactly in the middle without any deviation, which is almost impossible when there's winds and, you know, the nature of fireworks. So I just wanted to sure I would do it. That's where having a big flat wide area like Wilson Field and be very simple.
1 inch 770, 45 millimeters. 1 3/4 is 1 inch 750. Just to try to give that's probably 1 1/8 inches.
Bigger, yeah.
And that's probably 2.5.
It's like, there's. It's diamond, but.
1 3/4 is probably right about like that.
So my suggestion would be to agree with Brandon to table it, have the person be here and give Brandon the time to research the rules around it so that he can say legal, not legal.
Yeah.
I am confused because if we've granted that permit in the past. So that my assumption would be that if that's been granted in the past, then the legality has been addressed. But it, you know, based on the concern, seems like making sure that it's legal. And I noticed the police chief has not signed off. And so that would need to be a step. In that, right, we just make sure that it is legal. I mean, the fire, all those folks have signed off.
Yeah. Okay, motion to table it to the next meeting?
I have not signed up on it either. So it's both the police chief and I, you know.
I read that motion. There's second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Just a point of parity, a motion to table, makes that the first item on the next agenda.
Got that, Brandon?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Next thing on the agenda is the town plan land use chapter. And I believe this you, Joe?
Yeah.
Now that you're appointed,
Let me go upstairs and grab Ryan as well, because he wanted to come down here and do the
Okay.
presentation.
can we just go on to number 11? Salvage yard approval?
If we could wait for him just because he's
Okay.
stepping out of the meeting.
Okay.
He has a DRB meeting upstairs, so I don't want him to step out and then us be going on with it.
He's coming right down.
Okay.
Been doing lots of work on the town plan. We got maps. They're kind of cool.
I made a note to compliment the maps.
Yeah, Ryan did a lot of work on it along the rest of the
Very
board. But
legible.
it's nice to kind of see everything all come together. So here's the master of everything when it comes to it. Great intro for you.
Right, appreciate it.
He just likes to work with the colors.
So I wasn't sure if I should pull it up on my computer and share the screen and do it that way, or you wanna, whoever's controlling this, bring it up.
Tim.
Do you want to take?
Are there many people? Yeah, maybe that's probably the.
Sorry, go for it.
And then folks online, can they see the screen, or does that have to be shared?
That would have to be shared, so you would have to log into Zoom from my computer.
Is-
Transfer.
Is Zoom running on this, or, oh, that's over there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's in the packet, correct? So if you
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it might just be easy, but okay, we'll just do it like this. So I just wanna start with some of the maps, which sort of set up the rest of the language in the chapter. Okay, so this map shows what is currently forest cover. And so basically determined by LiDAR data and aerial imagery, satellite imagery, they put together basically land uses that exist. And so if you just pull up the forest cover, all of the green that's shown is forest cover, which is kind of indicative of the rest of the state. It's 80% or more forested. And the difference in the color, the shade darker is coniferous forest and the lighter is deciduous. And I think one of the most important features from a planning perspective and from an environmental perspective is the layout of the roads. So we have major roads, 106 and the interstate, Route 5, Center Road, and 131. And so that kind of breaks up the town into a couple of different blocks, roads being a major sort of fragmenting feature where wildlife could potentially have difficulty crossing certain areas, kind of depending on the condition of those crossings. And so what I did, and this was just sort of looking at a variety of different layers, what I would assume is the most likely travel corridors for wildlife. So they come out of this is a pretty major forest block, and then a Scutney Mountain. And to avoid the development and major roads and things like that, they tend to, because of the development, stick to somewhat higher elevation areas and forest cover. And so we had Jens Hilke from the state, the wildlife program, come down to talk to us about there's a requirement in state statute to discuss forest fragmentation and how land use planning is being done to mitigate that. And so one of the things he talks about is the larger the intact forest, the greater the biodiversity in those areas. And so we have a few larger forest blocks, which is the Hawks Mountain, the Scutney Mountain, and then so those are both shown on Vermont Conservation Design, which is like the state's inventory of these things, as highest priority forest blocks. And then there's another lower level high priority that's kind of around Wellwood Orchards and that area. So wildlife uses those areas as their core habitats and then needs to connect those as they move around for their different purposes. So this is kind of my assumption about how wildlife in general, broad strokes, moves around our town. And so in the town plan currently, it talks about things that we want to conserve, that is, protect for its use, which I'll distinguish between preservation, because preservation is kind of don't touch it. Conservation is more like agriculture, forestry, use it and don't spoil it. And so the things that we have called out is the highest priority blocks, which, like I said, that's what the state identifies as highest priority. And then we have this other one here. And then prime ag soils, those are protected in the zoning bylaws, as well as discussed in the town plan as an important resource we don't want to spoil. And then the lightest green shade on the map is active farmland. So they have an aerial sort of inventory of cropland, hayland, and pasture. And so those are all lumped into that. It's largely hay. And then there's some of these smaller ones that are scattered around are shown as pasture. But you can see kind of the concentration is in the Greenbush area, the Bow, and Wellwood Orchards. So that's what we have said in our town plan in the past and currently. That hasn't really changed. Those are the things that we want to protect. And then this map shows the protected land, shows what is actually not developable. And so anything that's a solid blue color, that we either have regulations that prohibit development on those areas or they've been conserved through a deeded conservation easement. And so we had quite a few, and so those deeded easements are sort of outlined in a darker blue. So that's a lot of the state land, the Army Corps property, a lot of the bow has been conserved. And so I guess it's kind of promising. A lot of that conservation is occurring in those areas that we say we want to protect. And so the owners of that land has sort of bought into it and agreed that it's worth protecting in that way. The other major blue thing that shows up are steep slopes. And so all these bands that run along the town, this whole area, those are all a lot of this is undevelopable because we have a bylaw that says no development on slopes greater than 25%. And then the other one is wetlands. We have a few things in our zoning regulations like the floodplains, and we have an inventory of biological natural areas and rare and endangered species. We have bylaws that say they're not off limits, developments can still occur there, but there are certain limitations that say it needs to be done in such a way to mitigate spoiling those things. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of if we were to continue to develop and build out the town, where is there really land available to do that? So a lot of this portion of Hawks Mountain is kind of undevelopable. There's a strip along the I-91 just below, I guess that's probably third lot, that if you were just looking at a map without seeing these kinds of things, you might say there's a bunch of open space that's developable, but that's all very steep. So, you know, when you sort of look at it, you have sort of an island here. If you're just looking for concentrations, obviously there's a lot of little spots that you could put small house lots or something like that. But if we were to talk about zoning maps and things like that, where can the town continue to grow out? There is a lot of natural limitations as well as deeded easements. So this map is kind of a snapshot as to where we're at. It shows the major roads as well as all of our other class 3 side roads that have been developed. I highlighted in red the kind of the village areas. We have designated villages, which is part of a state program, which is really just this tiny little area, and this little area is, you know, several parcels. But the village of Ascutney, practically speaking, really is a lot bigger than that. And the other thing is that pink clusters are just sort of my grouping of what looks and seems to function like neighborhoods. So like down here, this is Old Bow Road. There's a cluster of like 20 houses along the road. They're not connected to bigger areas. They kind of have their own little micro community, like a neighborhood. They can walk that road, there's low traffic, stuff like that. And so what I've tried to do is identify where we have these concentrations of residential uses, because one of the things that the town plan talks about in the state planning goal says is that we want to develop in our villages and protect the rural space in between it. And what we're kind of retroactively trying to apply these values to something that's already begun. And I don't necessarily think that's like it. We didn't fail at developing our villages and protecting everything else. This is just sort of how naturally things develop. Once you have access to an area, a nice road, you can build houses close to it and little communities sort of spring up. And so that's one of the maybe newer ideas that's discussed in the town plan. Basically to say that we know that there are these concentrations of neighborhoods, and those are also suitable for residential uses. And maybe the discussion goes further to talk about how to regulate those areas different from other areas. But that's really not what's discussed in the town plan. So that sort of sets you up for the language in the town plan for the land use chapter, because it's broken up into categories of preservation land, which is places we really need to protect and not do any kind of development. Think of like the top of Mount Scott. It's not suitable for, you know, large developments. It's important habitat, and there's no reason to to say that this is an area we want to develop. So we have that category, which is a relatively small thing. And then we have the villages, which are where we say we want to concentrate higher density residential development, mixed use, commercial too. And then that kind of leaves all the space in between, which the state says should be your rural space. But it's more nuanced than that. And so we're just trying to recognize that we have these neighborhoods, and so in the town plan we discussed that. That's kind of a new category of land. And then this map starts to look into the future a little bit about where further development could be suitable. So like I said, it's important to have roads already. We have sort of interior forest block here that's not really developed at this point. It's suitable in terms of it's not wet and it's not steep, but there's no road there right now. So rather than say this is all good development space, it makes more sense to try and concentrate it around where there are roads and already fragmentation is occurring. So so what this map shows is these red hash areas are potential areas that could be expanded into. And this is just sort of for discussion's sake. It's not a regulatory map in that way. And then the other thing that hasn't really been addressed on our future land use maps and in the chapters are wildlife crossings. So where the wildlife are crossing roads, it's important to have forests on both sides of those roads. That's going to be the best opportunity for wildlife to cross. If they follow forest down from the mountain here and then hit a lot of open fields, they'll sort of follow that edge until they hit something more suitable for crossing. So, and that doesn't need to be like a zone district or anything like that, but it might inform future bylaws about how to, maybe there's an inventory or something done of those key crossing locations and how best can we maintain that. And then the other thing is rural character. So we say that we don't want sprawl, and that's basically development just sort of expanding in a linear way along roads to the point where maybe you do a good job of protecting an interior forest, but the strip all along the road gets heavily developed. And that's okay from a wildlife perspective. Maybe the interior forest is still there, and maybe you protected a crossing or something like that. But a lot of the things that we value about Weathersfield are its rural character and the way that it looks when you drive around, particularly on the more traveled roads, the major roads. We wouldn't want to see 1 acre house lots all the way down 131. And so, in addition to protecting wildlife crossings and things like that, if there was some kind of limits on certain areas, key areas where we have scenic views and things like that, that I think goes a long way towards protecting the rural character of the area. We're not going to talk about it tonight, but as part of the transportation chapter, there's a classification system for our roads. The bigger roads are intended to be corridors to travel for people to drive through town, or it's supposed to be where everyone is headed. They go to those major roads to get to where they're going. And it in a perfect situation, you would have minimal driveways and intersections and all those opportunities for accidents or just slowing down traffic. And so we would ideally like to concentrate more development on the side roads. And it's kind of a win-win in that way because you would be protecting some more open space. And so this is kind of contrary to our current zoning map, which shows conservation C10 zoning district in those areas. And then RRR 3 to 5, the 3 acre sort of residential district, has a strip along here. And I think that that's sort of a logical starting place, but rather than have the entire strip, it would be useful to kind of identify certain areas where, like Weathersfield Center, where we don't want the same concentration of development as we do in the neighborhood area, as I have shown. So those are the maps that I made just to kind of get the get the conversation going. We started writing the language in the land use chapter, and it's just not really that helpful without looking at it on a map. So I guess before I go to the language, does anyone have questions on the maps and things like that?
No, I thought the maps were great. They were very helpful to me.
Great. So so some of the formatting, a lot of the formatting has changed. And so we have an introduction, just sort of a lot of this was taken from past plans. It identifies some of our shared values that we talk about in the town plan. Small, tight-knit neighborhoods separated by forest blocks and agricultural fields, which sort of mirrors the state's land use planning goal of denser villages separated by rural space. Low intensity commercial uses, scenic beauty and mountain views, forestry, agriculture, working lands, economy, diverse habitat for plants and animals, and low levels of light pollution. And one of the ones that was carried over was I think it was the maintenance of reasonable taxes or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I included a map. This is a photo of a map that's in my office showing the old school districts, which is one of the earlier ways that the town sort of looked at it and said, we can break up these areas largely based on topography and access and things like that. And so this chapter was very long and had a lot of history, which we wanted to. I don't want to get rid of all that history because it's valuable, but it is sort of saved in those older plans. And we talked about having an appendix or something at the end to sort of keep that. But from a planning perspective, a really long, wordy plan is hard to utilize, and that sort of is what results in not being used. So we tried to break it up in kind of a practical way. This table shows the chapters and basically the categorization of land in town. So preservation land being those areas we want to protect and not develop at all. Conservation land being places that we want to develop at a lower intensity and try and encourage those land uses like forestry and agriculture. Earth resources is something that was included in there that might be counterintuitive. But the idea is that that space hasn't been developed and converted to something more or less permanent. Those areas will be reclaimed when the operation's done. There's not going to be a high density of people living in those spaces. It kind of protects a large piece of property that is not irreversibly altered. And then developed land, which includes residential areas, commercial, mixed areas like the villages and our limited industrial districts. On the other side of that table shows the state and regional planning commission's categorization. I didn't really like their categorization, so I just sort of referenced how you could kind of translate that. But we're working together on the regional future land use map for Weathersfield and how that will hopefully mirror what we've been talking about. So as directed by state statute, it talks about what is the present conditions and what are the desired future conditions. And so we try to address that by those categories. I'll also just mention that preservation land can be broken down further into wetlands and uplands. They serve vastly different purposes and have quite a bit of other, of course. So each little section goes through that, what's current and what we would like in the future. If you see things highlighted in blue, that's just a reminder to the planning commission of something that is a placeholder that will, if I say it's going to be on the future land use map, I want to make sure that it is. So that's what those highlights are. And then there was 3 sort of concluding sections in each chapter that was goals, policies, and recommendations. And they were all given as separate sections of the chapter. There was a lot of overlap. There was a lot of things that were recommendations that were really goals and vice versa and things like that. It was sort of, I didn't think it was that user friendly for a board like the select board or the planning commission to kind of help prioritize what their goals should be and things like that. Or projects that they should be working on rather. So I didn't really change any of the goals. I think I added a goal if I needed it to house a policy that was already existing or something like that. But most of these things were already in the town plan. So it gives a goal, like maintain the rural look and feel of the landscape, and it has a little bit more specificity of what that means. But underneath that goal are a list of policies, which are basically things that the town should adhere to, or in some cases the state must adhere to. Like the state, the Public Utility Commission will review solar projects, and they look at the town plan when reviewing it to make sure that a project aligns with the town plan. So policies that we call out in the town plan do have some regulatory impact at that level. But it's also just for the select board when they're making a decision to say, does this align with the policies that we've approved and have described in the town plan? And then the objectives are more like projects to be worked on. Like this says, the Conservation Commission shall work with the Planning Commission to identify, rank, and map natural, scenic, and historic resources. That's essentially the same as what was one of the recommendations in the town plan before. So that's kind of how this is all organized and broken down, and hopefully, and this is just a draft. It's not complete, but we wanted to bring you up to speed on what we're working on so that you can kind of follow along. You're not dumped with a full town plan on your plate to say, okay, please approve. So that's this land use chapter is kind of the foundational chapter, and then the following chapters are a little bit more subject specific, like energy and housing and things like that. I'll take any questions, or if anyone other board members want to say anything about it.
Mike?
Just one that I want to add to one of your last comments, which is you got to state agencies, Agency of Natural Resources Act 250 and the PUC Act 248 do not look at the zoning bylaws. They only look to the town plan when they're doing state permits.
Say that again?
Act 250 and Act 248, Agency of Natural Resources is Act 250, and PUC, Public Utility Commission, is Act 248. They do not look at the zoning bylaws. They only look at the town plan in consideration of any of their permitting processes in town.
Any questions? Anybody else? No? Nobody wants to be recognized? Anyone have any more questions? Or?
I'm just, and this is just my beginner kind of questions. For example, on page, I guess it's page 12, where we go line 463, the objective the town shall adopt. The next one says the town shall update, the town shall review. Is that, and again, naive question, is that kicking the can down the road? At what point do we actually say specifically, this is what we're gonna do? Or
So like the subdivision regulations, the town shall adopt sustainable and efficient subdivision regulations. Your question is like, should we be more specific about that rather than
well, I just didn't know. It's like, so is that information that's included in the later sections?
Yeah, no, so these are sort of what the planning commission is suggesting are priority things for the town to work on over the coming 8 years. But they haven't, fleshed out these objectives. They basically said our subdivision regulations are in need of some work. And
This is the work
and
that.
yeah, so when the board is looking at what should they be working on right now, they can go and say, these are the projects that we've said we want to do. And the word shall, that was something that was suggested by board members. And originally, like the town plan is kind of visionary. It's not, to me, it's not so prescriptive, but we also want to use somewhat stronger language to try and cause that change to happen, because a lot of these objectives were in the past town plan and just didn't happen. Perhaps because it was lost in a really long, wordy document, or because there's a lot of fires and things that come up that we have to deal with. But yeah, this is supposed to be something to kind of direct where our energy is put.
And if I may, that's the strength of that language, shall update the outdoor lighting standards to be dark sky compliant. When the PUC or the Agency of Natural Resources is reviewing the permit and they see that, they don't see the zoning bylaws. They're just gonna see that and know that's the direction the town has said they want to go. And they're gonna comply as well with what this says. That's why we're looking for strong language here, the word shall. It's been replaced in a lot of places.
That makes a lot.
As opposed to should or. Yeah.
So I think that's all I have on that. I think we're gonna be bringing each chapter to the board, and I think the idea is to make sure that you're comfortable with all the specific things. Like if we say the town shall update their outdoor lighting standards to be dark sky compliant, we want to make sure that the select board is on board with those suggested projects before we get to a hearing where it's not well supported, because ultimately this is supposed to reflect what the elected officials and the townspeople want. Also, we will be doing an outreach event. I don't remember what the date was. It's mid-June 7th, early June 7th. It's a Saturday. Basically a presentation to summarize what is happening, how the planning commission is thinking about this town plan. Not really specific to the language that's going to be written, but sort of giving an overview, like those maps, about how we're thinking about the town, and asking for input. There'll be a survey that goes along with it that people can answer. It'll be on the town website, so it can be digital, to basically gauge what people say are their priorities, what are problems that they see, and solutions and things like that. So that's something that's coming up on the 7th.
And where is that happening?
It hasn't been advertised yet. We were talking about the center meeting house, but there'll be a notice that goes out.
Okay.
We're gonna post it on the front porch forum and the newspaper.
Well, it's not far away, June 7th,
I know. Yeah, anyway.
What? No, go ahead.
This is a huge amount of work and I appreciate it. I mean, this is a lot.
So we were trying to just sort of make the minimal changes just to get it done, before it expired. It has expired. And once I started getting into it, it was just, there was too much that didn't really align with what we talk about. And so this chapter changed a lot. Some of the other ones are only some words here and there. But yeah, I think it's a good time to sort of start fresh.
Well, I thought it was very readable, and I would have a lot of compliment for it. I think it made sense.
Great.
For me, not coming from that kind of background.
Yeah. Hopefully it's something that's readable for any layperson to be able to pick it up and understand.
Seems the presentation that you've done here, I wonder if that would be helpful at the June 7th meeting to the people. Maybe it'd be better to do it here.
Yeah, right. Yeah. The dates may have gotten pushed back. I forget if June 7th is the most up to date one. But yeah, we were talking about that too. Yeah. That might be.
I had a typo on line 21. I just wanted to.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's just.
Bring it to the planning commission.
Yeah, but I didn't want to forget it. I will between now
fair
and then. So I just wanted,
Line 21.
yeah, rural general just in the air.
When I see line 21, that's the
121.
I thought he said 20.
I'm sorry, 121. Sorry.
121. Continue our
Rural general.
rural.
general.
Okay, got it. I'll remember that for sure.
I wouldn't. That's why I wanted to point it out.
Your autocorrect didn't work on that one.
No, that doesn't help these days.
Anything else for Ryan? No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Thank you. Is he here for the next thing?
Thank you,
or
Ryan.
is he gonna?
For question.
I wasn't going to unless you want me to introduce
I
it.
did have one question.
Okay.
And again, maybe it's something that should go to the planning commission. Or, rather than being dealt with here in the town plan. But in the section, it's like, I guess again, sort of around page 12. And I believe that there's a section that talks about with the communities and the character of the villages. And you have two policies and an objective there. And you mentioned having a focus more on buildings and community and less on automobiles. And I was wondering, shouldn't there be something like a second objective that says to the effect of creating community gathering places and or maybe that goes more under the sort of the goal of wellness and active living and stuff. But one of the things that both villages really have lost is having an outdoor green. I mean, Perkinsville has a small green, but it's not really a place where, other than Memorial Day or maybe there's one other event, that people actually go there. And Perkinsville, Ascutney really doesn't have anything like that. I realize those things got lost when, in the 50s, 60s, when both of those villages got so damaged. But I personally think that would be a lovely thing to include, that we think in terms of how do we make our villages more, some public gathering places, that people aren't always secluded away in a building, but that in fact, that you can have a band concert outside, you can have a picnic area, you can have we have Hoisington Field that served part of that purpose.
Yeah.
So it's just a suggestion.
Yeah. So when we were going through this land use chapter, we didn't really get very specific. A lot of those goals and things were sort of pre-existing. Just sort of thinking about broad picture where things could go. And it did sort of come up once we got to the economic development chapter, which was one of the later ones that we've gone through. But sort of the principle is to have the people who own land and pay taxes to be successful enough in their endeavors to be able to maintain their properties. And one of the things that we want to, beyond business economic development, is to have high quality living conditions. Like in the village, to have some kind of walkability, or not even just in the village, but neighborhoods anywhere. To be able to have a safe road to go for a walk on, because that's a huge driver of property value for residential properties. So I think that those concepts might get a little bit more fleshed out in that chapter. But yeah, I think it could definitely be echoed in this one too, where we're talking about some of that stuff. Yeah.
Sure. Just a question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Shall I stick around to introduce
The next one.
If you don't mind, because you're the one that did the
Certificate of
inspection, so-
approval for the salvage yard, Hodgson Brothers Incorporated.
So on a 5-year basis, they have a certification that the select board has approved, basically identifying the location of the salvage yard. And so what I did was met with Dusty and Colby, and basically walked it, saw the site, he pointed out the perimeter boundaries and things like that, explained how it's being used and things like that. But I didn't have any particular comments to bring forward about it. It all seemed as described. I don't know what the process has been in the past, but the select board has approved it typically for a 5-year period.
So this is a 5-year renewal.
It has a blank space on the form. I think it says up to 5 years. And so 5 is what the previous one
One through
had.
5.
Any changes?
No, anything small. We use less space for the salvage yard than we did, only because there's me, no help. I'm getting too old to do it.
Yes, you are. Did I say that out loud?
But no, we haven't really changed much. We've done everything the same. They did. But 2 years ago, the state recommended that we put a fence up in front. We always thought the chain link fence was good enough. So we started putting a black tarp down through the wind so that people can't see in. For what reason, I don't know. It's kind of hard to say you're a junkyard if they can't see you. But, you know, we would have to hang the sign up on the road. But we've done that. It wasn't the town that suggested it. We've never had a problem with the town in any of it. It was the state that suggested it, only because people they suggested it right after they put the campground in, if you want to look through. Because too many campers going by and people go, oh yeah, we're up in Vermont, we don't want to see that. We came out of Connecticut, it's in my back door. So, okay, we'll cover it for you, thank you. You know what I mean?
Let me plant some shrubs for you.
Actually, my opinion, it does look better. Just because I live in a junkyard don't mean I need to live like a hawk. That's been my father's goal, my goal, his goal. But we are covering it. We got everything to finish the fence all the way down. We don't go any past, we don't do anything that we're not supposed to do. Just easier to stay in line and keep our nose clean and do what they tell us to do, and we don't have any problems.
Mike?
Brendan, how do you want this one to read? This is a certificate of approval, so a motion to approve the certificate of approval?
For location of a salvage yard for a period of 5 years.
Parcel number 050340, 9 acres located at 4678 Route 5, Scotland, Vermont, known as Osden Brothers Incorporated. I make that motion.
Second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Just put that ready for us and we can sign it for you.
Will do. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan. See you next one. I mean, you're welcome to hang out. Nope, that's fine.
Listen, we gotta go down and water it. I don't know, we
What does it have?
I'm gonna.
Next on the agenda is town website discussion. Jude.
I think the forest requested the agenda item.
I did. I just wanted to bring up, I know the board last year was not supportive of putting any attention on the website, and I've Nancy McNary's blog is disappearing.
Yep.
I do know people use our website to get information.
Yep.
Maybe more than we might realize. So I just wanted to bring up how important I think the website is, and any good website is only as good as its maintenance. How well it's overseen, how well the information is kept up to date. Everyone organizes information differently, so you're never gonna please everybody about how you lay it out.
Yep, that is true.
But I think first and foremost, making it consistent, making it accessible and keeping it constant. Would do the town a great service. I know we don't have anybody. I don't know if we have anybody designated specifically to look after the website.
It's basically me. Have you gone through it and determined like what's not consistent?
I have
What
not,
agree.
no,
Okay.
I just know I go there to use it, to look for
Yeah.
information. Some things are hard to find, I will say some key town documents are hard to find, like the town plan and the zoning bylaws and subdivision regulations, things like that. It took me a while to find those. But I get discouraged when I go out and the top event on the news page is long outdated. Some of the other pages are not kept up to date as well as they might be. So I think it's important, and I think it's important that it be in a format that people can access easily on their phone, because most people use their phones to do this. And what looks good on a desktop may not look good on a phone. So I just wanted to urge the board to consider putting some support behind keeping our website up to date consistently.
I think the biggest thing is finding the time for me to be able to go through it all the time.
And I don't see that as something we should have to do as a manager. It seems like something that staff should be able to take care of if you have the appropriate staff person to do that. I've found it's most successful when you have one person looking after it, that there's one key party with a backup. Other people should know how to access it, but one person whose job it is to make sure it's kept up to date. But that's just my experience and my opinion. That's all I wanted to talk about.
What was it we were looking at a year or so ago? Exactly.
We were going to hire a company to basically go through the website and get everything in order. So we put a scope of work together, Patience and I, and then we advertised the request for bids. We had way more bids than we anticipated. I think we got dozens of bids. And then we presented it to the select board, and the board ultimately, I think there was some support for it, but it didn't get approved.
Weren't we looking at using ARPA funds?
Yes, yeah. That's the
So
project.
basically, I don't recall it was an issue with not wanting or supporting the idea. I
No,
think it was a matter of how we were using the money from ARPA that drove the decision, than lack of support for the.
it was prioritized lower than other higher priorities. And I think let me talk to my team internally and see what we can do. The biggest reason we advertised it for bid is because none of our staff had the time to get to it. Typically, we come into the office and we're go second by second all day. So it's just finding the time, and this often gets pushed to the side, unfortunately, which is why we're going to have somebody else contracted to do it.
Yeah, which I think is probably the right way to do it.
And then from there, the contractor was going to develop a maintenance plan, and that plan I was going to either try to, I don't know if just one staff member would be able to, depending on what the maintenance plan looks like, maybe it broken up between one or two people.
The next hurdle, or the hurdle that I see now, is we had bids from a year ago. So, do we continue to use those bids? Do we honor those bids? We have to redo that whole process.
There was one specific company that we wanted to work with. They were the low bidder.
Okay.
But maybe re-advertising it would be the correct.
I just got done reading the purchasing policy, so that's what triggered that thought was,
Yeah.
Can we really, or should we really?
And like at least me and Suzanne, we like to work on the website. But unfortunately, when we come in, because it's fun to go in there and modify it and make it look better and be able to see the end product. But it's just finding the time for it.
I was the chair for 3 years. I've seen your days blow up.
It's a regular.
And everybody else goes right along with it because stuff has to move around.
Have we, and again, it's, I don't recall, but has anybody actually looked at a variety of different towns' websites to see, gee, this one actually is for us from the outside. This is really easy to find all this information, and who designed your website?
That's what we did.
Oh, it is?
So like prior to us advertising the bid, we even went through it in the pre-bid conference on websites that we liked, that were really easy to use. We built this website like in, I think it was 2020 during the heart of COVID. We got a local government expense reimbursement grant. And it's when like everything was going remote and we rushed through it. I think the grant was like $15,000. And we put something together that was like, and ever since then we've updated people's names and some of the information, but DeForest is right. It needs attention. And I'd love to come in and spend a whole day on it, but that usually isn't possible. So
are you looking to redesign it? I guess I'm confused. Civic Plus was the one that designed it, correct?
Yep.
And do we still pay them to host it?
yes.
So what do we get for the money we pay them? Are they looking out for broken links and that kind of stuff? Sorry.
No, and that's exactly what it was. The project that we put in place was to fix all the broken links, to reorganize the material, just go through the entire website.
Wait a minute, can I just,
And we're just,
that's what I don't understand, is why would we hire another company to critique Civic Plus's website?
no. Civic Plus is the amount that we pay them is just for the hosting. They don't actually, they could never, I mean, they have thousands and thousands of websites.
So they provide you no tech support at all?
Tech support in the sense of like, if we want to add a board and committee page, they'll create the link for it, but they will not create anything else. We then go in the back end and develop that page. And like when planning commission member seats expire and we need to add like a new member profile and load up the web page itself, that all happens from us. And those are things that
Right.
I do. When people are appointed, I jump on there and I make sure that they're updated, but that's about, and we create news articles and the purchasing and bids page on the website is something that I maintain, so that's up to date. Like the requirements is what we maintain, everything else.
I understand all of that. What I didn't understand is what do we get from Civic Plus for the money we pay them?
The
Other than
website
just
hosting,
hosting.
yep.
Okay.
So
So
we
you-
pay them.
I think it's like $2,100 a year, which is really cheap.
It's a pretty bare bones municipal
It is.
website.
Yeah.
Platform, right. So you'd be hiring somebody to go through it and say, we don't like this design, or this is what we see as a problem with your design, or?
Not with the design itself, but they were gonna go through, work with every single department head, develop the pages, make sure all town policies, anything that applies to that department, we're gonna build a little library for it. So that the information like you were looking for would be easily accessible. It was really an accessibility project and also a project to update all the broken links and make sure that everything makes sense and that each web page is in order. So they're actually gonna go to like on the Conservation Commission agenda, there'd be an item for a web page discussion. And the contractor was gonna go to the meeting, work with the Conservation Commission and develop that page, get feedback, and then implement it. So we were trying to get every page like its own library and have all the content on there. It's something that we wanted to do, but we haven't had the time to do it, so. And there's also web pages. Let's see here. like a local business directory. That's something we tried to get to. What else is on here? List things to do tab, for example. Like each one of these we really wanted to build out. But when you click on it, it's still under construction. So they were gonna go through each one of these. We get to the point where we created the pages for them, but we haven't built them up.
So you basically, you have the skeleton, but it just doesn't get fleshed out. So.
Yes, and every time I add it to my action list to do, it just higher priorities just keep taking priority, and it just never happens. So
I'm sorry, I can't call you a doctor. I have to call you Mr. Murray.
I like it. I just want to share on the budget committee, this came up last year when we were looking through the budget, and we looked at that cost. And the feedback we gave the town manager, was that very similar observations, that Ms. Beers had. We thought some towns like Hartford and others, they had a, email alert system where we can subscribe and all residents can sign up and then a push goes out. And so that was one feature we thought might merit, the expenditure of a contract to improve the website. And then another one was the community events calendar. The calendar page was something that we all thought, when there are meetings and events in Weathersfield, those kind of, the events and the email notifications go kind of hand in hand. And the third thing was the benefit of having a good email alert system is if there's emergency information too. That's just one more mechanism. So I just want to make sure that we felt what he was trying to do made sense in the budget committee, and I understand it was debated at the time of other things with ARPA, and that's something you could ask the budget committee to look at again. But I think the consensus was that those things all made sense and were not extraordinarily expensive.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't it the budget committee that actually requested the RFP to go out?
They made we just recommended, that's all, we just recommended.
God forbid we should do another survey, but it wouldn't help. It wouldn't hurt to find out what people really do use the website for. Do you want to license your dog? Do you want to pay your taxes? Do you want to get a fishing license? Do you want to see when the next DRB meeting is?
I think that's a good.
Have we ever done that? I don't think we've ever done that with our town website.
Yeah,
I've been through a few of them, and we've never asked people what they really want from it. And I think it always makes it much easier when you have a clear goal in mind, what it is you're trying to create.
I'll create another survey.
I'm sorry.
A little gun shy though, because the survey that I created in the last meeting didn't go.
Well, yeah, keep it short. Sorry.
Yeah, we don't need one of those 50 pages there, Chief. Okay.
Like 10,
I'll-
10 questions, 20 questions, 30
One
questions.
page.
10.
10 questions.
10's enough. At the most. Maximum.
Always.
All right.
Never more.
1 questions.
One page.
I'll throw one other caveat out here for the rest of the board to consider, and that is, maybe caveat's not the right word to use here. We're about to hit June, July, August, September. Guess what starts after that?
Budget.
We're not that far off, so just keep that in mind that we're going to be heading in that direction. That
And the reappraisal commences
yeah.
in just like a month. So
Yeah, it'll be almost 2 years before we see all of that. A year to 2 years before we see the data from that. Yeah, at least a year, I think.
Let's go on to our next subject, person policy,
They didn't change.
first reading. Is everybody, is this the same thing as this, right?
yes. So this is the revised purchasing policy. I worked on it with the treasurer and the executive assistant of finance at the time. And this is the policy that we came up with. So we're interested. One of the big things that was missing from our last policy was definitions. And even though some of them may seem pretty simple, I don't want them to be open to interpretation. Because that's some of the stuff that I've struggled with over the years. So I defined several things. within this policy. We amended under section 3 or we revised thresholds and purchase orders. Purchase orders are not something. If we were to do which we haven't really used, we haven't used them over the years.
Excuse me, where are you?
I'm on page
Well, section 3.
section 3, where purchase orders is gone. So you would see that in the current policy, but you would not see it in this one. If we were to sometimes we use a purchase order form. You can see that in 3.3. And that's just a paper purchase order form. But to use the purchase order module in our accounting system, it requires a significant increase in the amount of work. And although it was a good idea, it just wasn't realistic to do. So for 500 to 2,000, there's a paper purchase order form that we've been using for over the years, rather than the purchase order module. So that's sufficient. We haven't had any issues with our auditors, and that one of the things that we have had an issue with is the purchase order forms not being completed. So that's something that the auditors have brought up with me over the years. Purchase orders form is used, for example, let's say the highway department wants to order some tires, and that particular purchase crosses over a certain threshold, and they're required to get 3 quotes. You would fill out the purchase order form and the 3 quotes, and then Ray would sign it, he would draw it on me, I'd review, make sure everything is there, and then I would approve it. And then from there, it goes into a folder for backup. So that's the way that we've been using purchase order forms. Okay.
So what else has changed in here from the old one?
Um,
Has the amount changed?
yep, so under,
Purchase and goods on 3.4, did that go up?
yes, the threshold was, the
50?
threshold was 10,000 and the state is 40,000. So what we did is go right in the middle at 20,000. And then beyond 20,000, it would require a request for bids. This has been particularly, like the thresholds were particularly challenging during certain grant projects, because what they do is we can use the state purchasing policy or the town purchasing policy, whichever is stricter. So it kept us stuck. And then in the exceptions, we added, because in the last purchasing policy, even though it must happen, every Monday we approve payroll. And then on Thursday, it goes out, and that happens before the warrant gets approved by the select board. So these payments on behalf of employees for payroll deduction accounts, this is something that wasn't in the prior purchasing policy that we wanted to add. Even though we've continued to do it, we've continued to do it without abiding by the purchasing policy. But the only way to do that would have been to have a meeting every time. And it's just automatic, like we can't stop the withholding of taxes. So. And then we have voluntary deductions for insurance, deferred compensation, retirement contributions. So we added that as an exception to the policy. Another exception that we added was the payment associated with the renewal of property and liability insurance. This is like our workers' compensation insurance, also our liability insurance, fidelity bond insurance. We listed telephone, internet, and electric invoices as an exception, debt service payments. Payment of appropriations approved by special articles at town meeting, they're already approved. So we didn't see any reason why they wouldn't be an exception. Yeah, that's pretty much it. We clarified a lot of the language.
There, anyone wanna make them? Yeah.
Both Nate and
I have a question.
Go ahead.
What did you say a sole source purchase is?
So, let me see here.
It's service contracts with professional services and sole source purchases.
Where are you at, Nate?
I'm in the exceptions.
Okay.
It's the
So
second
sole
one.
source purchases is when you only have one source to purchase from. And this typically happens with PPE. For the fire departments. Although I have heard that there may be a competitor to MES at this point. One of the, and this was in the last purchasing policy as well. What this does is if you are in a position to where you need 3 quotes, but you can only get 1,
or
this
two.
gives us, or 2, this gives us the ability to move forward without fulfilling that requirement. Now, obviously, if you're doing a project, a construction project, there's not just gonna be one person to hire, like you're gonna obviously be able to get quotes. But it's just like those sole source situations, like PPE is the biggest one that's coming up.
I might have a string of questions here.
Okay.
It kind of starts with the language that says purchases of goods and services. And it's in 3.2, 3.3, 3.3, 3.4, 3.5, 3.6. But then the exceptions, specifically bullet number 2 says service contracts and professional services. So to me, that's a bit confusing as to whether or not it's required or not required. And I wonder if that maybe needs to be cleaned up a little bit there. The other.
Yeah, I think I could, sorry about that. I'm gonna remove that.
Yeah, you don't want, I understand where you're trying to get.
Yeah.
We've dealt with enough of this.
That's a good point.
But in one place it's saying you gotta do it, and the other it's saying you don't. So that's gotta be cleared up. Another thing that I want to talk about, Brandon, is this purchasing policy. Is there any language that's been added in here to deal with a grant funds, or is this is it separated out? Is this specifically for our budget that we're dealing with?
It's all town funds. So when it comes to grants, we work with the state on those purchases, and it's whichever policy is stricter. So we would have to, now it depends though, because if the state also has a state bid where they already go out to bid for a list of things. And with those, we can just choose from that list. But no, grants are not included on this.
The reason I bring that up, you know, but some of the other board members might not. Ray does a great job with the highway in getting grants. And when he writes the grant, it's for X number of miles to do X number of work, and it's X number of dollars. And to me, that makes him the what is it? I'm sorry.
The grant administrator?
Yes. I was going into the death world, but the executor. I knew that wasn't the word I wanted. Anyway, but if we go to bid with something like that, and you have a set number of dollars to do that job, and it goes out to bid, and you hire somebody to do that job, they specifically do that job, that number of miles, that much money, you pay them, and that's it. what Ray has been doing as the executor, the administrator of that grant, is he hires the contractor that he works with, and they pay him, he pays them by the hour. And what's been happening is he gets to the end of the job, the end of the miles, and there's still $30,000 left, and we get another 3/4 of a mile or another mile of work so we get more work out of it for the same money. I think that's a good thing for the town.
Yeah.
Do we need some sort of language here in this personnel policy to explain that process for you so that that isn't an issue?
Yeah, I'm gonna talk to the treasurer about that one. Because I don't think my interpretation, even on the purchasing policy, didn't require us to go out to bid because it was grant funds. But I do want to.
Even if that statement's in here.
Yeah, okay. I just want to talk to the treasurer about it and see if he can, how he would craft the language. But I think we share a similar opinion on this, so.
Right. I wonder if that's actually I noticed when I read the introduction of purpose, right, which I think is well crafted. The only thing that I which is, and maybe the board disagrees, but one of my beliefs is that we're not only trying to be responsible, the bid process is really about giving all vendors a chance,
yeah,
right? Open the doors so that when we're doing, and this is what I think with Ray's situation, right, where he needs an excavator, right, for a short amount of time, is to make sure that we're not like we're giving everybody around town a chance to
We're not playing favorites.
right. That's what I'm trying to say.
And Ray is not doing that as well.
Oh, I agree, and he was intentional about this. Is the problem. I have a list, right? And we talked about having a list of all the folks in town who wanted to put their name right on the list with their hourly rate or something, so that
And their machines, what they have,
Right.
their equipment.
it just. I think the intention should also include something about making sure that anybody can submit a bid if they can do the job and do it well, and it's safeguard on public funds.
Yes.
That we don't create this, perception of an old boys network per se.
Yes, and on the other end of that, we're not all gonna be here forever. And you wanna try to set up a system that works, that moves forward in time with other boards, other members that might, like I was tripping on that, well, here it says you can do it, here it says you can't.
No, it's
You're gonna
a
have a
good
problem with
point.
that.
And it's good to have like 5 more sets of eyes on this, because Steve and I, we review it and review it and review it, and everything looks good to us, but having the additional review is very helpful.
It's good because we get to do it multiple more times, right?
We have 2 more readings, so.
Are you ready to move this to the second?
Yep.
Motion to move this to the second reading?
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Second reading. That be at the next.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I may have the treasurer just come in for that one.
Okay, town manager update.
3 minutes.
I only have 6 updates. I was able to get it in writing. You guys have a copy of it this meeting. Sorry, it was the last.
Oh, you read it. We're supposed to wait.
Greater maintenance contract, so the town previously paid $19,500 for the maintenance plan on the grader back in 2021. We did track down both the contract and the minutes. You were on the board, actually you and Tyler were on the board at that point. What Ray was having an issue with is when he contacted Caterpillar, he was told that it stopped at 3,000 hours. And when we looked at the contract, it did say 5,000 hours. And he sent that back to Caterpillar. And at this point, they've reinstated our maintenance coverage in their system. So,
Yes,
yeah, we're all set there. Boards and committees, we have all the rosters there. I did receive some feedback to add the mission statements to the rosters. I haven't admittedly tracked down all the mission statements at this point, but it is on my list to do. So I plan on having that either at the next meeting or a future meeting, depending on the next couple of weeks go. To include in the rosters. So.
Would you include them with the rosters or just as a, like, this is one addendum and then there's another addendum?
So I think, like, you have the composition of the committee, and then you have, let me use actually the Conservation Commission, for example, composition appointed by meetings, location, function, term. I think having the mission statement down there, I think that would be a good idea. Okay.
I don't think I was talking about a mission for statutorily mandated boards.
I see.
It's just a description of what their purpose is, what they do.
Okay.
So that was what I had said. I could certainly see a statutory reference as a footnote. But for example, the Development Review Board hears applications for appeals, variances,
I see.
additional uses. That's what I was talking about.
Okay.
It's boards
That
that
makes
are
a lot.
not, yeah, boards that are not statutorily created. They're created by the board.
Yep.
And the board sets the vision or the mission or the purpose of that committee.
Yep.
Whether it's an ad hoc committee that's gonna sunset at the next town meeting, whether it's going to be ongoing for a purpose. And what is that purpose? So I'm sorry I wasn't as clear.
In committees.
Should have been.
No worries.
So
So
what
I'll take
does
a-
the,
I'll take a stab at it.
what's the Martin Memorial Trustees, what is their purpose? Why do we have this board and what do they do? In as concise a language as possible. And rather than give a statutory reference for the mandated boards, use that as a footnote and just explain. Plan Commission oversees town plan, zoning bylaws, subdivision regulations, something like that.
Okay.
So that when people see this, oh, that sounds like something I'd be interested in doing. Whereas they see just a statutory reference and may not bother looking it up.
Okay. New employee, any other comments on the rosters?
The range of members. Development Review Board is 5 members. It still says
Oh, it doesn't.
a range. They all say ranges. It says 3 to 5.
Oh, so I put 3 as the minimum, because in the case that we at least have a,
But that's what the state statute
Okay.
allows you to do. You have to pick one. And we've chosen 5. It's a 5-member board. State allows us to go anywhere within that range, but you have to pick one. And
I
we've
see.
chosen 5. Our popular resolution that we just adopted says 5 members.
is that the only one that needs to change?
Planning Commission. Let's see. Conservation Commission, again, state statute allows us to have 7 to 9 members, but for the purpose of open meeting law, you need to pick one, and we picked 9. So our board is 9 members.
Did we choose 9, or in the policy does it say 7 to 9 or up to 9? I'll have to look, let me revisit that. And take a look at the policy. Conservation Commission does have a policy. And Parks and Recreation has one as well.
But Conservation Commission is statutorily created.
Yeah,
Right.
and there's a policy that goes along with it with bylaws.
Yeah, but I'm hearing your point, which is if it's statutorily created, it says you're allowed 7 to 9 members and we set it at 7 or we set it at 9.
To comply with open meeting law, you have to
Right,
have
so-
those members.
To say we set it at 9, that's our
That's our board.
That's our
right.
board.
Your footnote can be your statutory reference. If somebody wants to
Okay.
change the number of boards, they can say, well, here, you have the right to change it to 7. We only want 7 people, so we can change it. But at that moment in time, we've chosen 9 seats or whatever it is. There's nothing under Planning Commission. Doesn't say how many seats are. we have 5 on the roster, so I would assume you set it at 5.
You could actually put statutory requirement 3 to 5 members.
Right.
Weathersfield Select Board determined 5 members, something like that, you know.
Yeah, we need to do that. And the select board's a 5-member board.
We should be known.
Okay. I'll address those, and once everything's settled, I will reprint them and we can review it again. All right. New employee training. So we're pleased to welcome 2 new employees to our team. We hired Kayleen as our account accountant.
What's her last name?
It's Lavertue, Kayleen Lavertue.
How do you spell it?
Lavertue. She has a bachelor's degree in accounting, and accounting experience from a certified public accounting firm in Newburyport, Massachusetts. She started last week, and we're very happy to have her. Julia Gumbar has also accepted the part-time position of administrative assistant. She took on Olivia's role. We reduced that from 30 hours a week to 8 hours a week. And we moved the land use administrator position to full-time. So we found ourselves in a position where we needed a lot more land use time. So when the opportunity presented itself, we made the decision to do that.
And Kayleen is how many hours a week?
She's 40. Yeah, she's our full-time accountant.
I'll say the planning commission has been recommending a full-time administrator for at least 3, 5, 7, 9 years now.
And I do have to say, having Ryan on there, being able to do more is extremely beneficial. The work that we do. So big props to him. He did a great job.
We're very fortunate to have him. He does an amazing job.
He absolutely does, and we love working with him up in the office. He's helpful, informative, good person to have on your team. Both new hires are currently undergoing a structured training and onboarding process. It's about 4 weeks long. Fire chief recruitment. The fire department committee finalized and approved the updated job advertisement and job descriptions for the fire chief position. The position was advertised, and we're accepting applications until May 30th. The review and interview process is scheduled for the first week in June, and I anticipate making a formal appointment at actually the next select board meeting on June 9th.
Are you seeing a lot of applicants?
I have received interest. I've already begun receiving letters of recommendation. So we're actually going to be reviewing that at the fire department committee first. And if we can reach a decision in the committee meeting, then we'll do it on June 9th. But if we're stuck, it may be the second meeting in June.
Just curious.
We're getting hopeful at June 9th, but
I'm just curious if there was a lot of interest.
a lot of interest. I wouldn't go that far, but there's interest with some.
Good.
Grounds maintenance bids. We received 2 bids for seasonal ground maintenance services covering the sites listed. After a thorough review and cost analysis, I awarded it to TJ Property Management. He's been doing it for a while and he came in with the most competitive price at this point. So we moved forward with TJ Property Management.
So, and you said they have been doing it for the last.
Oh yeah, they've been doing it even before I got here. And they do a good job. It was nice to see some competition. Typically, we don't have anybody that bids against them for those services, but this year we did. But still, TJ Property Management, their prices were still the most competitive.
And who is TJ, man?
That's actually Josh Doffin. Yep. Solid Waste Services, Alpha Waste did accept the conditional offer, but we're still in contract negotiations. I'll let you guys know how that turns out at the next meeting. There's just a couple of things that I saw in the contract that I want either removed or changed. And working with the solid waste district representative from the select board, and then also writing in West Windsor. FY26 tax rate. The state has not yet completed the property valuation review. Our part is done. We're waiting for that. Grievances are going through this week. And then we anticipate everything to be finalized on June 1st. We remain on schedule to set a tax rate first meeting in July. We'll have to call a special meeting to do that.
Now that's a can we should kick down the road.
That's all I have.
Any questions for Brandon? Okay. Future agenda items? Got what we need to add to the already here, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And when we need, we can go over it some more. I think I did forget. The future agenda items.
The political sign policy. Why is that on there?
I think it just had come up, way back last spring, and it just sort of kept getting added, it was a low enough priority item that it just kept.
I do have that
Did you keep
document.
that paperwork?
I do, I have found it. I know right where it is,
Okay,
because there's actually a Supreme Court decision on it.
yeah, I knew that, yeah, okay. All right,
So we want to add that.
Probably gonna wanna drop it, but if you wanna wait till you see the document, that's.
Yeah, rather than send that to me so I can take a look at it.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah,
we wanna, we're
Uh,
all set for that then.
yeah, we're all set and we can talk about it.
well, enough nuisance and unkempt property ordinance. I'm looking to thin this down a little bit. Because, we got a lot of stuff sitting
We
here.
wanna,
Nuisance and unkempt property ordinance, is that really something we wanna venture into? Are we gonna make it into that this year?
That is something that I think you guys studied that while I was on vacation. And then Ryan and I worked on it, and it's with the town attorney, so we've already invested time and money into it.
Oh,
don't we already have some type of ordinance in for that when, we did the thing with, I wasn't on the board then, but when you did something with, the Hodgson Brothers junkyard way back when? Wasn't there an ordinance or something done back then? On properties? That must have been back in your.
What you're talking about, I don't.
I'm not,
Maybe I'll look into
You're
it.
talking about the 90s.
I'm not sure any of that would even be, because I know the state stepped in with the definition of a junkyard. And they are required for you to fine somebody for that
Yeah.
level of offense. I think we've had one or two of those in town. I'm
You just wanna know whether we should keep it on here or not, but
I wasn't aware that we actually made any kind of indication to move forward with that.
I see.
we didn't.
So when I did my debriefing, it was something,
It did come up. Ryan is the one who brought it up, not the board. We sat and listened and talked
I
about
see,
it.
okay. Let me see where we're at with it, and if we're not too far, then we can drop it if you guys want to. If not, if we're already, the town attorney's already reviewing the draft, so. I think it's worth,
I'm
we're
not,
already at the draft.
I'm not in favor of dropping it,
Okay,
because Ryan had asked for help. There are complaints about junky yards.
Yeah.
Not
He does
junkyards,
help.
but, and that the zoning ordinance has not been a successful means of enforcing it.
Yeah.
That it gets too expensive and it gets tangled up in court proceedings and no action. So he was asking for help to resolve some of these complaints and felt that a new tool in the toolbox might be of benefit, and this was what he suggested. It is allowed by state statute, so I thought the consensus was check it out.
and that that's when Brian and I did a debriefing when I got back from vacation, that's what he told me, so we started moving forward.
You know, I'm not in favor of dropping it, especially if you've already invested ton of money in it, it's,
I wanna see what the language says. Yeah.
Okay.
did you?
Yeah, I was just thinking that something like that, shouldn't that be landing in the planning commission's ballpark, considering we deal with the bylaws? I don't want you guys to get all tied up with HOA stuff.
This is not a zoning ordinance, this is a standalone ordinance. It wouldn't come to the planning commission.
Yeah, it's not planning commission. It's kinda like saying you can't have more than 3 unregistered vehicles on your property.
Yeah.
There's an ordinance that didn't come from the planning commission, that came from here. Years, way even before I moved to town, I think.
Yeah, I'm familiar with those, a lot of towns have stuff like that.
Yeah, it's one of those, but, yeah.
I still probably love to get buried in,
We're already,
verbiage.
well, that's one way to look at it. We're already paying a town's attorney to do his job. That's not gonna go away. So we ought to look at it. That's the way I see it at this point. Whether we agree on it or not, it's a whole nother. You know, and whether it's actually gonna provide any tools that are different from what already exists. You know, we levy fines and they don't get paid.
Yeah.
They just get ignored.
But so what happens though, is we've started putting liens on the property.
That's what I would do.
And that's actually worked. So
it sounds like the problem's already has a solution.
it is. So
All right, well.
now we don't do that automatically.
Right.
It's like
Okay, we can't discuss this any further because it's not on the, it's not on the agenda item.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, sort of is. So, but you're right, go.
Is it? Yeah, do you have something?
I just had a question in terms, I'm not sure it's a future agenda item, but do we do a performance evaluation for you? And is that something that needs to be scheduled or how does that work?
so I have not had a performance evaluation. Well, I had one, but it never actually it never actually became a performance evaluation.
So is that something we should add here? Is that an agenda item or is that
There you go, Mike.
I thought it went well. They gave you a 0. That was the highest score you could get. I saw him read it. Very.
But it never actually became a final performance evaluation. It was started and then it was never given to me fully. I mean, we sat down and talked about it, but Paul was supposed to do more on it and then he moved and took it with him, remember?
Oh, yeah, that's right. It's awesome.
Get that man back here.
I'll have to call him. Yeah.
We'll discuss that a little.
Yeah. We definitely should.
Okay. Any other business? I'm looking at you, Mike. Anything on that piece of paper down there?
No.
Okay.
I
Approve the warrants. Make a motion, we approve the warrants. General fund payroll, $13,760.89. Operating expenses, $58,824.97. Highway fund payroll, $9,744.84. Operating expenses, $27,837.76. Solid waste payroll, $2,168.49. Operating expenses, $24,914.27. Library payroll, $2,399.74. Grants, $305.30. ARPA funds, $10,821.28. Pleasanton Field, $2,132.50. That little total is $13,259.08. Grand total payroll, $28,073.96. Grand total operating expenses, $124,836.08.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
Motion to go into executive session. This is, one VSA 313(1)A.
Those in favor?
We need a second.
Second,
Second that.
and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Everything set up in my.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Good night.
Sorry, I missed yesterday.